So far, we've mostly been running nodes one at a time. That's fine for a quick experiment, but the real power of Runchat is chaining nodes together so the output of one flows straight into the next. That's how you turn a pile of individual steps into a workflow that does something really useful. In this video, we'll cover how to draw connections, how to read them, and the 2 or 3 features you'll use every single day once you start building powerful workflows. So to get started, we'll create an image node. Again, I'm just going to use SDXL Lightning because it's cheap, and I'm going to use a Runchat primitive called the text input. So to connect these 2 nodes, I'm going to drag from the output, which is always on the right side of one node, and I'm going to connect that to the input of the other node. So now if I make changes to this input on the left and I say a Gary building, you'll notice that this input is being set as the prompt field in this image node. So now if I run this, it will create a Gary building based on that prompt input. The cool thing about when you drag away from an output or an input is that all of the names of the other inputs or outputs on the canvas will be displayed to make it easier to choose which one you want to connect to. Now, if I was to change this upstream node, it will flip the downstream node. So the reason being is that this node on the right now has a different input than it had before. So previously it was set to a Gary building. It generated it, but because the upstream has changed, it's flipped to its input to let you know that it needs to be run in order to show the latest data based off the changed input. So we'll run this. If I wanted to create a node that uses this image, I can grab the output of this node, and if I drag away into empty space, it will give me the Add Node menu. In this case, I'll select Flux 2 Pro, and you'll see that when I selected it, it created the node, it connected it to the previous node, and it decided to plug the image that's being output into the image input of this node. And you can see also that it still requires a prompt, but the prompt isn't connected to anything at the moment. If we look at this workflow so far, you'll notice that there's different edge colors. All connection lines are color-coded. Every type of data has its own color. Text is blue, images are yellow, video is coral, audio is pink, 3D is teal, and so on. You don't really have to memorize them. Just know that at a glance, the color tells you what kind of data is flowing through the wire. This is really handy when you've got a big workflow and you're trying to figure out what's going where. A quick look at the colors can follow the data through the whole thing without needing to open anything up. So Runchat also checks compatibility as you're connecting. If you try to plug something into a spot that doesn't make sense, like wiring a video into a place that expects text, it simply won't happen, and it'll tell you why. We'll just create a video. So I'm just going to create a really cheap video to show you how that works. So we have this video now, and for example, if I take a video and try and make it a prompt, we get this alert at the top that this is an invalid connection because we can't convert a video into some text. Okay, so here's another really useful feature in Runchat. When you're typing text into any text field, like a prompt, a code node, you can hit tab. And what that will do is it opens a panel showing previously used prompts. If you hit tab again, it'll show all of the outputs from other nodes on the canvas. So you can see if I cycle through these, it highlights the output of the node that's selected. So I could use this Zaha building output here and use that inside of the prompt without even needing to connect it. So if I just pick this for the moment, it will drop a little tag into the text input. When I run this workflow now, that tag is going to get replaced with the live value from this field here. In terms of how it's connected to other nodes, you can think about it as writing prompts that reference the rest of your canvas. You're not copying and pasting values or connecting them. You're referencing this node by using a tag. This will use that value when it gets run. There's also an @ shortcut that does the same thing, that shortcuts to parameters. There's also a credentials field, and we'll cover that when we start talking about code. This is really handy when you've got lots of nodes and you can't remember what's named what, and you want to get the output of a specific node. So sometimes a node can produce a whole list of things, a batch of images, a set of variations from a single prompt, a bunch of results from an agent, and by default, Runchat treats that list as a single packet. The next downstream node can take a whole list as an input. To make a very rudimentary input, I can type input and you'll see that there's a number of default inputs here. I'm going to use the text input. I could use tab from earlier, add a Gehry building, and then if I add an input, I can hit tab again and use a Zaha Hadid building. This is a list with two items in it. The first is the Gehry building and the second is a Zaha Hadid building. Now, if I were to drag away from the output of this node and use this as a prompt for a SDXL Lightning image node, we would expect that it'll create two images. It'll create a Gehry building and also a Zaha Hadid building. You can see this 2 next to the play button. That means that it'll be running for 2 inputs. You might be a bit confused. It's only showing a single value here. But actually, if we hover this node, you can see that there's this selector to go between different pages or items in a list. So if we go between that, there's 2 list values being plugged into this node. If I hover the play button, you can see that it's going to be run twice, and the hover tells us that it will be run 2 times and it'll cost double, which is 4 credits. So if we run this, it will generate 2 images, 1 for each of these inputs. Another trick that helps to tie this all together is to remember the all parameters menu we saw in earlier videos. Any parameter in there can be published to the node itself, which turns it into a regular input you can connect to from somewhere else. So if I select this, I can pick one of these values that I can publish and it will become a parameter. I'm just going to use seed here. And so if I click this button, it's going to expose it as an input. So now we have prompt and we also have seed. If I create a number input, I can connect that to the seed. You can see that we can change this value and it will update the seed value. So seed is now 4, which will give us a different image. That'll give us the ability to drive something like aspect ratio or number of variations from another node. And that slider could be an agent output or a dropdown that someone fills in when they use my workflow as an app. This is how you make parts of a workflow controllable from the outside, which becomes really important when we get to publishing in the last video. That's connecting nodes. You know how to draw a wire, read the colors, how to reference other nodes inside a prompt with tab, and how to publish any parameter onto the node so that it can be driven from the outside. In the next video, we'll look at one specific feature that builds on all of this, the image editor. It's how you take a generated image and make controlled edits to it instead of just prompting and hoping for the best.